Hi, I'm Paul Brodie. We're in my shop. Mitch is behind the camera, as usual. We're working on a Romax frame. This is what I have so far, and now it's time for the Seatstays. I have a couple options here. I have some Columbus, which is 0.6 millimeters. They're a little on the thin side. That's road bike thickness. And someone gave me some Seatstays, and they're bent. They have a tiny little hole for the bridge tube, which is in the wrong place, but I can fill that in. They will work. I put it on the drawing here, and they fit, and they're even the right bend. So I'm gonna use these. So the first step is to set up the mill. We need to angle the top of the stays at 31.5 degrees. That's written on the drawing. So let's get started. So I'm making a mark where I have to grind up to, and I'm going to use my Tom Ritchie belt sander. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop it out like this. This is basically what it's going to look like that, and on the other side too. That's what I'm going to do, because this centerpiece is going to go over top of the dropout, and then it'll get fillet brazed inside and on the outside. If I was doing a lot of these, like 50 pairs, I'd set it up in the milling machine, but for just doing one pair, it's easier just to do it like this. And you see how it fits? I take a pair of pliers and I put a little radius in here so it starts it coming around. That's going to be after the mitering up here. That's about where I think I want to cut it. And I can check it on my drawing. So I've got this at the back where the dropout is. And then if you come up here, you see the mark I made? There's my mark. And it's right on the center line. It's right on the center line of the seat tube, so I like that. Same length, that's a good sign. This is the Seatstay jig, and these are the stops. And when I loosen this and move it in, you can see how it either widens the stays or it narrows them. So I need to set the spacing up here. And it's too narrow, so I need to go wider. So I loosen the hold and I come back a little bit. And what that does is make it a little bit wider. Okay. I made this Seatstay jig in '85. I was still working at Rocky, and this has done over 4,000 Seatstays for frames. There's the sick one. This is my Seatstay fixture. We even made up a little label there, and I need to change the axle. This is for I think it's a 148 through axle. So I've got a system of little V blocks here. Can you see that? See, there's a V in there, and there's a V on the other side. So when I swap axles, it's also got a raised section in the middle. When I swap axles over, which is one Allen screw, everything is perfectly lined up. It's a pretty neat system. I know the guy that invented it. I put the fixture into the dropouts. You always got to make sure they're all the way up, otherwise you'll get a false reading. Lean it over. And I didn't have the right size for the seat tube extension. This is the normal piece I put in there, and this fits in nicely. So a little bit of Home Depot masking tape, but it's going to work fine. And then see what I'm doing? I'm pressing up with a finger and pressing down with the thumb. That makes sure that the fixture goes all the way up in the dropout. That's important. There it is. That's the Seatstay fixture holding the dropouts, so the rear wheel is perfectly in line with the seat tube. You can see here how it's not going on because it's up too much, and then down here, you see how much I can go down? I can go down about 1/4 inch. So I do that by opening up this lower part of the Seatstay. Take a pair of pliers. See what I'm doing? I'm trying to keep the radius fairly nice. And that's how I raise and lower each of the stays, because the stays have to be level. This has to be lower, and this can be very, very close to the braze, but just a little ways away. So I need to come down a little bit. So pliers. Look at that. That's what I want. Got a tiny little gap there. That's fine, because what I'll do is I'll put a TIG tack right on that. That's going to hold that. I'll tack on the first side, and then I use a ruler and I set the level with the other side. So that's the sequence that we'll do things in. I'll tack the left side first. Give it a little sand here. What I'm going to do here is a fusion pass. I take my TIG torch and I don't use a rod. I'm holding this with one thumb, and I melt these two together so it'll be concave, so that when the nickel silver flows over it, it flows over it very nicely. You don't get to see any lump. Put a little TIG tack here, then I'll flip it over and I'll do a little TIG tack there. So that's the left stay on. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to bend this around. Incrementally bending. Okay, so I got to come down here, and you see how the Seatstay is touching on the dropout here? I need to shorten that up, so I'll take it out to the belt sander. I'll make that a little bit shorter. I thought I took off too much, but no, I didn't. It's fine. And that looks about right, although we have to check with a ruler. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to hold the stay on, and then I put the ruler on here, and then I'm eyeballing the ruler and these two axle pieces. That lets me know if the stays are the same height. And that's good. That's good right there. So next thing we'll do is I'll take it over to the brazing stand. We're going to braze up the seat stays onto the seat tube extension. And someone was asking about the nickel silver rods. They're a 1/16 inch, and I don't know the brand name, but they used to be known as a 773 rod. So if you're phoning your local welding supplier, if you say nickel silver and 773, they'll probably come up with something. I've got the TIG tack right here, so I start brazing on the other side. That's a common mistake, is to start brazing where the TIG tack is, and you get the TIG tack really hot and then it pops. Then you basically starting over again. That's not a lot of fun. So you notice how the heat is right on the seat tube. I'm not aiming at the seat stay at all. And I'm pretty close. The first thing to do is just to get nickel silver to join the two. Put the rod, oh, there it goes. Okay, that was nice. Can you see that? I got a little tiny tack there. So now I just have to flow it round. So I'll go around there as far as I can. Then I come this way, going towards my left hand. So what I'm going to do now is I call it backwards brazing, because I've got the torch aiming backwards, and the reason is because I don't want to burn that little end of the seat stay, because it'll get quite hot. There you go. And if it's a little bit lumpy, it doesn't matter because I'm going to flow it in. So there, I'm right up to the corner. Now I start, and I've got extra there, but that's fine. So now I come over here. There's the tig tack, and I want to get a little over the tig tack. And because I didn't use any rod, I did a fusion pass. There's no lump, so I can go over that very nicely. Okay, so now what I've got to do is the end here. So I don't put the torch straight on, I've got the torch sort of across. Can you see how it's wicking in? Now if I take the torch along here, I can use two hands. And if I go back and forth, this nickel silver should flow inside. There we go. And I'll come around the front a bit. So now I'm on the back of it around here. And I should be able to flow it all the way around. And then I've got a 360. You can see the braze, fairly smooth. So now I flip the frame 180 and I do the other side. Seat stays are on. I'm going to braze up the dropouts now. I'll show you my technique. First I go around on where there's points of contact, of really close. I use a little bit of nickel silver, and then I finish up with the bronze rod to fill in all the gaps. There we go. A little bit on the top. So that's the first step, is just to join with a little bit of nickel silver. And now we have to fill it in. So I'm going to fill this one in. So I'm going to put a little bit of an angle on the frame like that. And then you have to be careful. If I get sloppy and I melt the bronze and it goes inside and there's a ball that runs down, now I have a rattle in my frame. Don't want rattles, so you have to be careful how you melt the bronze. There you go, I just filled it in. So what I want to do is I want to put a little bit more heat on it, make it flow inside just a little bit. There, see it sunk down right there? That's what I wanted. Now I'll add a little bit more. Then I'm sure that it's gone inside onto the part that I shined up with the file. Remember that? Good. And you see how I keep the cone really close. So that one's filled in now. That's looking fine. Do the other side. I can hear the fluxer gurgling in the background. There we go. So they're just heating up the end of the tube a little bit just to melt it inside. You can see again how it's sunk down just a little bit there. Sunk down a little bit now, I'll fill that up again. Okay. On the transition, what I'm looking for is an arc. So I need to put a little bit more right here and a little bit more along the stay. And then I need a little bit of extra right in here. It's like a little blob, because if I don't, I know from the past that I get a low spot. So it might look a little lumpy, but there's a reason for that. And what's nice about the fillet brazing, if you do a good job on these dropouts, put a little bit of paint on it, you can't tell where the dropout ends and where the stay starts. Okay, that's one side done. So now I have to repeat that process over on the other side. I'm going to file up the dropouts now. I use a combination of the wide belt sander. This is 3/4 inch wide. Use the spiral roll and also the 1/4 inch belt sander. So it's a combination of filing tools. So this here on the chainstay, it's got a smaller radius. I can't get in there with that same belt sander, so I'm going to use a spiral roll here. Okay, so that's all the work done with the spiral roll. So now we're going to switch to the 1/4 inch belt sander, and we're going to give this a nice radius. Like that. And then you see how this is rounded here, and that's a sharp edge. I can blend this into that by doing a little bit at a very small angle. So I've got a very small radius right above the brazing, and then it goes into the sharpness of the radius there. That turned out well. And there used to be an extra eyelet on there, but I cut it off. I can smooth that now with the belt sander. So if I take 80 grit emery now, this is my mic stand that holds up the torch, but if you're doing a bunch of sanding on the park stand, sometimes if you're pulling hard, it wants to pull the frame down. This way the frame can't go down, and if I sand like this, it helps to sharpen up that edge, like that. Okay. I'm working on the Seatstay bridge tube now, so I've got the dummy axle in. The spacing for this one I'll check was 14 3/8. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to do the same spacing here. So that's going to be the center of the bridge tube. And there's the other line. I made these years ago. What they are tubes, and each one is marked on the top. Can you see the markings? Those are the different angles. So if I go say 15 degrees, this is the same size as a bridge tube. So I can put it into the frame and I can see how the angle is. And if you look from here at the seat tube, can you see how it's too high? So that angle is too big. So I'll try a 13. There's a 13. And it's still going up a little bit. So if I try an 11, 11 is just about right. So I'm going to set the mill at 11.5 because it's better that this part of the miter is grabbing the stay than the inside part, because if the inside part is hitting, it'll rock. When there's a little gap on the inside, doesn't really matter. It supports it on the outside and it holds itself in place. So we're going to do a little bit of mitering on a 1/2 inch chromoly tube, 035 wall. And it's a pretty thin tube, so I'm going to find something that goes inside so that when I clamp it, I'm clamping. I think maybe a drill bit might work, so let's have a look and see what I got. Look at that. So it just goes in. That's a good fit. So what I'll do is I'll put it inside the tube. I'll rest that on a block so it's level. And then I'll miter that in. What I'll first do is put this in the lathe, I'll polish it. Then I'm going to take a red felt pen and I'm going to mark a line down the center. So I always put the red line up on top so that my two miters are in line with each other. That would make sense. So a piece of extrusion. There is one straight line right in the middle. I've got a height block that's going to hold it level. I put in the drill and I don't want it to be right at the end, so I've got it in maybe so far. So far so good. So I put the line right on top, and because the drill bit's in there, I can clamp it pretty hard and I don't squash the tube. Noisy. And that's it. Okay, so the bridge tube is going to go, there's the center line of the bridge tube. So if I measure right from here to here, I'm taking into account half the OD of the bridge tube. That should be good. So that's my miter mark right there. So I'm going to hacksaw it right there. I'll just go by hand. We need to take off a little bit more because it's not at the center. So we'll take off another 50 thou. That's my guess. Oh, look at that. We're good. I just have to take off the burrs. Tack on the bottom, not on the top, so it doesn't lift up. Just like on the chainstay bridge. Okay, that's my tack. going over the tack, blending it all in. And that's it. Just do the hole now. There we go. Have to work on the cable routing now, so I'm going to have a noodle. This is called the Noodle, and it's actually going to have a noodle on the other side as well. This had internal cable routing, but I don't want that on my frame. So you see here, see this piece here? That's a little piece of steel, and it's 1/8 of an inch wide, and it's 165 thou high, because you want the cable to be the same height as the cable stop. So I made up a fixture. This fixture has never been used. See how it fits on? And I also made one for the opposite side. So I take off this little piece of aluminum, and then I can put it right onto the other side, because I need one of those, what do you call it, a height block, a standoff block. I need one on each side. So that's the next thing to do. Let's see how this works. Very professional masking tape. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a little tack on one end, and then I'll put the other side on, and then when I take off the fixtures, that's when I'll nickel silver it all around. That is a tiny tack. Okay. So I'll do a little bead there again. So now if I take a ruler like this, put it on both stays, can you see the center? So it seems like the top wants to be right about there, just like that. So I put a little bit of heat on each side, because then it makes the flux dry, and that helps to stop it moving around. It's like a mild glue, that's all. There we go. That's a tiny tack. So I take a ruler, because now I put a ruler on this, and I can see if it's level. That looks fine. There we go. Put some heat on the other side so it flows through. Make the outside smooth, and we're done. Okay. I bought some U-brake bosses off Nova Cycles, and they come with a hole in them. I'm not sure why. I guess it's for venting, although there is a hole right through. So I filled in the holes. These are the ones I'm using, and I also re-mited them. These are mited for something like 1 inch, and I'm putting them onto 5/8 stays, so I did that. So that's a little bit of a modification. And then this is the fixture that I made to put on the U-brake bosses. This is for a 26-inch rim, but I'm putting on a 27.5. So can you see what I did here? I modified. It's 12 millimeters difference. This puts the bosses farther up the seat stay. So those are the modifications. And then for the cable routing, you're going to see what's happening. And see how I filed the groove in there? The cable routing is going to go right next to the boss. I've never actually done this before, I don't think. So I'm going to silver solder these on now. They're going to get silver soldered on. So I used the silver solder flux. I also marked the brush so I don't get the brushes mixed up. So we got flux. So the one with the notch is going to go on the right side, and the offset goes inboard because the spacing that I like is about 88 millimeters. So this has to come up so it's level. There we go. Looks good. This is a noodle maker. I know that sounds funny. I made a noodle maker years ago and it got lost over time. So I can't even remember exactly what it looks like, but I'm trying to recreate a noodle maker. So this goes in like that. Can you see here how there's a stop? That's the first bending stop. So there we go. That's the first bend. Then this piece has to slide along. Slides in like that. Gotta leave a little space there. So that's about where I want it. So I'm going to put this in. When I put this into the vise, when I squeeze this, it clamps on the lower piece. It just ended up like that. So this is the second bend now. Over like that. There we go, I make a bend. Comes up like that. This radius around here has to match the seat tube, otherwise it looks funny. So we're obviously way up in the sky here, so this needs to bend down more. So that's why I have this here. This is something I made a long time ago. So there we go. So this has to be lined up with the top tube, and that looks pretty good. And then this has to come right around, it has to match. And then this has to be in the middle, and it has to be aiming right back, and it has to be in the same plane. And that's not bad. It's not bad for a guy who hadn't done it for 35 years. What we used to do, spilling all the secrets here, we used to hold this on with masking tape. And then we would tack this, see how it's lined up, and then would braze the nickel silver this one on. So I think that's what we're going to do. Okay, that's on. Looks pretty good spacing, doesn't it? So I'm gonna tack it on one side and then do the other side. That's always a good idea. There we go. So right in here, that little groove, I need to silver solder in a little tube, and that's going to be the cable guide. That's where the cable is going to go, like that. Basically the same thing, and I don't go quite as far. Yeah, see, this has to go the other way. Because this one's going to be the same height as the Brazing, right? So it just has to come around and anchor on right about where my fingernail is. That was a tiny bend right there. Okay, maybe we have to go with that. It's tacked. Okay, I think that's all done. Okay. I need 3 hands and I have 2, but I'm making it work. Not bad, it's just got to move it just a touch. There you go, I can feel it move. Okay, I like that. Ooh, that was too much. Okay. That's on. All right, so it just has to be hacksawed off and filed. Let's see what pulled or. Got a tiny little gap there. And this one is just a little bit. So 137. 136. That was if that's true, that's very, very straight. So we got a tiny gap. Just touching. $136. Okay, so that's very good. Got the campy tools, and we have a little bit of alignment to do here. Can you see how they're not level? So give it a little bit of a pull. A little bit of a gap. So it comes down just a touch. There you go, that looks good to me. They're very close. So the frame is aligned because everything else was aligned previously. I know there's still some fluxing and brazing to take off, but let's stamp a serial number now because we're basically done. So I'm going to put the serial numbers right there. I normally put them right there, but look, Tom's got his logo right there, so I can't stamp over top of Tom. Wouldn't be right. Here's my book. So we're going to do 4268. That's my next number. It's my own frame. It's September 1st in 2020. It's a 21-inch Romax 4268. We need the 2-pound hammer, and there's a 4. I still need to soak off the flux. I have to cut off the ends of the tubes, give it a little polish, but this is all the time we have for today. So I hope you have enjoyed watching the Romax basically get finished. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time. Stay safe. Thank you.